Hello and welcome to our first show of 2021. I'm Carlos, and joining me in the PTUK Master Suite studio, as always, it is the very, well, bright and fresh Matt Smith.
Are you still on the eggnog? What's going on there?
You've been watching too many Christmas films, Matt.
Oh, have I? Oh, sorry. Well, of course. Yeah, come on. It's post-Christmas. You're allowed to. It's been fun. It's been fun. I'm all right, mate. Happy New Year.
Yeah, Happy New Year. How have you been?
Yeah, good, thank you. It's been lovely not sort of doing much, really. I've been doing a bit of the job, sort of day job in between and that, but it's been really nice. I had a good Christmas, just me and Mum. And then
Alfie.
And Alfie, of course, and Mima. And then Boxing Day down to go and see my uncle as part of the three units that are the three households that are allowed to meet up.
Bubbles, units.
Yeah, whatever you want to call it.
Things,
so we have taken full advantage of the fact that we're allowed to go and visit other people. So we've done that. Yeah, so a little trip down to Clacton-on-Sea. Classy, I know.
Lovely.
For Boxing Day. What about you? What have you been up to?
No, not a lot. Christmas Day with Gemma's mum and dad, which is lovely. And Boxing Day for the duration of Christmas, we were just on our own, really. Actually, just kind of chilling out here because we're
with Poppycat.
The families are all so fragmented and everything round the whole of East Anglia. So we kind of decided that we'd do, because of Gemma's job with the NHS, we'd kind of stick to our home turf for Christmas.
Good plan.
Yeah, but it's been good. Put on far too much weight. New Year's resolution to lose weight. That'll last for about 10 minutes.
Right, good.
Unfortunately, I'm like Mr. Bounds. I do like a nice glass of vino. So, actually, I will ask Matt. Did you see the Christmas special with Gino D'Acampo and Gordon Ramsay? No.
No, I didn't. Is it?
No, you missed
it. Something I need to watch.
Brilliant.
Is it? Okay,
it was brilliant. You need to watch that on catch up.
Okay, all right, I will. Okay, because we're not alone in the virtual studio.
We're not alone. No, we have got the king of all things Vino de Plonco. It is, of course, Neville Pounds.
Yes, you're suggesting that I have a problem with it.
No, I did not say that, Nev. I never said.
I don't think I'll be drinking anymore for a while, and the diet really does start today because, you know how it's easy to overdo it at Christmas and the New Year, isn't it? Well, of course, because of the rule changes, we're now in Tier 4 down here in Buckinghamshire. That means we can go nowhere at all. So it was a very fat Christmas spent at home, totally overdoing it on the food, not walking enough. It just means that the diet is going to be far more difficult in the new year.
Happy New Year, everyone!
Yes.
Now, of course, there is one person who doesn't have to worry about that because he's ridiculously.
Hold on. I was just going to ask one quick question, Matt.
Oh, okay, go on.
Just one quick question. How is Nanny and Grandad live?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, that, yes, of course. I'd almost forgotten. Obviously, we couldn't see them over the Christmas period because of the lockdown thing, but we did see them just before Christmas, and it was lovely to see 1 week old Finley. And what a fantastic little boy he's going to be. So, it was absolutely delightful. So, congratulations to my son, David, and his fiancée, Jade. An absolutely bundle of joy, little Finley. So,
has it sunk in yet?
No, I don't think it has, even though a few weeks ago, but I don't think it will for a while, so we'll have to see. But, it is fantastic news for both of them. And obviously, we are available for babysitting duties. Give him back at the end of the year.
Actually, begs the question, Nev. Have you brought Finley any BA monogram?
Oh, not yet, Carlos, for goodness sake.
Yes, I'm going to have a look through Plane Reclaimers very shortly to see what's on there. And maybe we can get him a sort of some sort of BA memorabilia of some sort. So,
Armando, rescue the situation, please.
Yes, Armando, hello and welcome.
I'm not going to help at all. I'm still hung up on that British Airways crockery set that they were selling. I'm thinking some of those napkins would make some great baby clothing.
Wow. Okay. Napkins. Wow. I don't know what to say to that. Turn them into nappies or something. Wow. Okay.
So on that note,
I've been on the eggnog. Yeah. What have you been doing, Armando?
Well, let's just say this is not tea anymore.
Right. Okay.
It has been a quiet Christmas and holiday season for us. We are also sort of just staying to ourselves, doing a self-quarantine, and family Christmas was just the three of us. Well, I guess the five of us with Benny and Lois.
Of course.
And because it is the first of the new year, Megan and mine's anniversary is the 31st of December. So happy anniversary, babe. And she's staring at me with just loving eyes.
Yeah, yes. Lockdown going well, is it? Is there a bit of, stabby eyes, is it?
Oh, no, those were, probably March of 2020. Oh, that's when lockdown started, right? Those were stabby eyes?
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. That's the one. Oh, dear, never mind, all part of the fun.
How many pairs of socks did you get for Christmas, Armando?
2, and they have dog faces on.
Oh, excellent. Brilliant.
God, he's not even joking. Wow, okay. Brilliant. Well, it is the first show of 2020, and as many of you, I'm sure, are aware, we like to do a little bit of a clip show. It's the only one that we do every year. Obviously, as you probably realise, this isn't live. This is a pre-record, which is why... Yeah, I know, absolutely, which is why Armando's...
We're live.
Yeah, oh dear, never mind.
The chat room's full.
Is it? Right, no, that's because we've just finished doing a show.
Oh, that's just my belly.
My goodness sake. It's also why Armando's lovely, long-suffering wife is looking at him to say, what do you mean it's not our anniversary yet? What do you want? But anyway, but that's all part of the fun. Sorry, have I ruined the illusion? Okay, sorry. Carlos, you carry on.
Yes, so part of our fast show, part of our first show for the new year, we thought we'd get together and we'd choose our favourite part or favourite interview, favourite segment from the last kind of year. So we all put our heads together and we had a choice of what we wanted to pick. Lots of great things we've done over the last year and bits of interviews and stuff we've done. So we're going to go, actually, I think we'll go to Nev first. Nev, what was your choice of interview or segment for the favourite part of the show?
Yeah, it was so difficult to choose, actually. I mean, we've done so much in the last year, but there's one thing for me that just stands out above all the other things that we've done. This is my own opinion, obviously, but just under a year ago, we had our 300th show, if you can recall that. I can't believe it's 12 months ago for a start, but we were at the Renaissance Hotel at Heathrow, where we had a fantastic gathering of guests. There was food and drink, obviously. There was a lovely cake. And of course, who could believe that just 2 or 3 months after that, we're into a big lockdown and all the COVID stuff. So it's actually really nice to see this segment again. And here was the bit that we showed right at the end where all of our friends from the PTUK world were talking to me about how much they'd enjoyed it.
So I had a job where I just had to do a lot of office work, and I got tired of listening to music. So I ran across Jeff's podcast, and then I kept looking for him, and then I found the Airplane Geeks, and then I ran across y'all. So it just kept growing from there.
Oh, I've had a great time, Nev. It's been good to celebrate part of the 300th show.
I think the social aspect more than anything else, I mean, the whole thing was well done. I mean, I think the live plane tales without a hiccup was pretty impressive. I always assumed that there would be a lot of outtakes there, but I think he's just putting that on.
I thought it was wonderful. It was just great to see all of the people that I didn't know and to see the old friends, and it was just fantastic. You really put together a wonderful event. Loved being able to see all the planes out the window. It was just fantastic. Really, really great. And so great that, the hosts from PTUK and Paul came over. Fantastic.
Obviously at work I have a lot of listening time. You get bored of listening to Spotify and different music things. So I started looking because I like sort of talk radio shows. Used to listen to Chris Moore's show back in the day, and just started looking to see if there was anything that I could listen to aviation related. I stumbled across, I think the first one I stumbled across was Plane Crazy Down Under, and then they advertised PTUK. I think I joined about episode 40 something. I think Matt had just started it, so and just kept going from there.
And what got you into listening in the first place?
You did, my friend. You did. It was our frequent flying together and running into you at the airport, and you told me about the Plane Talking UK podcast, and I thought I need to find out what it's about. And it's been great joining the community, joining in when I'm traveling the world and looking for a little bit of entertainment, a little bit of news, and a little bit of fun information from a great bunch of people.
Absolutely excellent. It's my first meeting, and it's really my first contact with Plane Talk UK. But I found the whole thing, the way it's been organised, very, very impressive.
I listened to another podcast that has a 24-hour stream, and they just put other podcasts on that they appreciate, and one of them was Airline Pilot Guy. So what happened was, like, the podcast I was listening to ended, and it came on, and of course the dulcet tones of Captain Jeff sucked me right into that podcast. And then, the other hosts and their banter, and it's so humorous. So I totally got hooked on that podcast. And then from there, of course, PTUK, Plane Safety Podcast, and Airplane Geeks, and and everyone in this community from all the podcasts are just such wonderful people. Such a wonderful community.
It's fascinating, and to see the workings of Heathrow that you would normally never get a chance to see or understand. That was really fascinating. It's nice to talk to the pilots and find out what's really going on the flight deck. Find out from the flight crews, from who's in the cabin ahead of me, who's in the cabin behind me, if I'm not in the cabin behind me. Great to see people who really enjoy aviation, the people who are flying me as well as me flying with them and getting to know who they are.
Great selection there, Nev, and very fond memories of that, for sure. That was quite an epic day, and as you said, we had no idea then what was round the corner. But hopefully, we'll have a chance to get together again for another big meet-up at some point soon this year.
Yeah, so, very much. Yeah.
Armando, over to you, and give us your choice for your favourite part of the year.
Well, this certainly wasn't an easy decision. When we first started talking about our favorite segments, I think 2020, despite its quirks, we did so many good interviews, and you guys did a fantastic job just editing them, and so many great people that have joined the show, and I believe we've grown a little bit this year. One of my favorite interviews was actually Neil from Fairdair, but since we just played that 2 weeks ago, I'd say my next favorite interview from the year was actually Arial Tweto, and the reason that is because I just remember going crazy over Flying Wild Alaska and how it was one of the first aviation shows to really make it into prime time, and I think Ice Pilots was quickly after that. But Ariel was a star of the show, along with her dad Jim and her mom Ferno. And this show follows the Tweto family in Unalakleet, Alaska, and their little airline. But it was just it's something that reminded me of when I was really, really getting into aviation and working on my pilot's license, and she was just a great guest to have on the show.
So, Ariel, obviously, again, thank you so much for coming on the show. It's an absolute pleasure to have you on. And so basically, obviously, we all saw the series on Discovery. I know I absolutely, me and Armando thoroughly enjoyed the series. It's absolutely amazing. But your family has arguably done more than anyone to promote aviation in Alaska. So how did the whole show sort of come out? How did the Discovery Channel kind of approach you guys? Was it, was someone came and Peter saw you one day and...
So, no, it's actually a way different story, and a lot of people don't know this. So I actually went to school for TV and film production and in California. And so I did a little show on ABC called Wipeout. It was a big competition show. And so on that show, I got in like second place, and then they invited me back and like 2 more times to compete. And I just kept breaking things and then having a blast. And they were like, oh, yay, this is... But then I fell in love with... I'm like, people do this for a living? People, like... I want to keep making TV shows. So I met a guy on the show. He was our safety coordinator, and he had just been to Alaska, and Deadliest Catch just came out. So me and him, we were like, hey, my family's interesting. My dad runs an airline. Everyone in my family, they're all pilots. I was like, let's do a show about my family. So me and him, I think I was 20, we pitched it to all over Fox, ABC, NBC, Discovery, and it took like a year to pitch. And then, and I didn't really tell my parents about it. And we just sort of, a film crew showed up, and my dad was like, why aren't you in college? And then we started filming for like 3.5 years. But yeah, so me and a friend actually created it.
That's pretty awesome that your daughter that's in college just shows up with a film crew to you, to your house and your company.
Well, he didn't think it was that awesome at first. They're like, our family is really not that interesting. Like, we're just like everybody else. We're pretty like just a normal family. And so, yeah, he didn't think it would work. And after though, a couple of our the film crew lived with my parents after the show ended. We all became this big family, and everyone just like loved my parents. So they were like, can we just live with you guys for a while? And that
was actually one of my questions. Is once it got pitched and they showed up with the rigs and the lights and the microphones and the cameras, how did that go? Was it disruptive to the operation? Was it kind of what we would all envision, like this big film crew, or was it just a couple guys with cameras and microphones?
So ours was it was pretty big. So in our so we had 3 bases. It was in Unalakleet, where my family's from, and then we had another crew in Bethel, and then another one in Nome. And it just depends on who had the coolest story of the day. And so and so we had probably 15 to 20 people on our crew. But then in our little airport, it would be maybe 5 people, 2 cameras, 2 producers, and then a sound guy. And so for the first week, it was a little weird. It's always weird having a camera right in your face, especially if you're having a bad day, or if you're tired, or we had a couple episodes where some people passed away. And so in those moments, you're I just want to be by myself, get the camera away. But as a producer, you're like, no, get a camera in front of your face. So it took a little while to get used to, but after that, you forget they're there.
Well, that's pretty cool. Carlos, did you have one?
Yeah. So obviously Alaska can be quite a harsh environment to obviously fly in. We have snow in this country, but as me and Matt know, we get about 3 flakes of snow, and that is about all we can manage.
That doesn't count as snow. It doesn't snow in England.
No. So
no, we don't get snow. We don't get snow in England. We get snow.
Snow. Yeah. Snow. That's all we get. Yeah. So what are some of the craziest stories you've heard or experienced, obviously with the whole environment of flying in Alaska?
Well, it's always, where I'm from, we're right on the coast, right on the Bering Sea. So it's always windy. It's and so just the crosswind landings are always insane. My dad could land on one of the runways. He could land when he's coming into the wind, when it's blowing 45, 50 knots. It looks like he's going backwards. We'll watch him, we're like, no way, he's going to do this. And it's seriously, it looks like a helicopter. It just drops. But wow. So the wind's always crazy, and then the weather changes in an instant. It could be sunny like this, and then in a minute, fog. So I would say the weather is just pretty insane. The one good thing that I love about flying in Alaska is you don't really have airspace. You could be flying in the middle of nowhere, and well, FAA, whatever, they could hear this one, but you could be flying 20 feet above the tundra. And just be like, wow, this is amazing. But there's no cities, no villages around you for hundreds and hundreds of miles. And so you're not constantly on the radio. You don't have to constantly be looking for other planes coming in. And flying here near LAX is crazy. You'll be I'll be flying in this little experimental plane, and then below you are jumbo jets coming in, and you're like, whoa, this is nuts. So I actually think it's way scarier flying in California than in Alaska, just because I'm not used to the radio communication that goes on. And I love to talk, so it's weird that the thing that scares me about flying is talking on the radio.
Yeah, and Sean, feel free to jump in. Sean Van Hatten is probably flown all kinds of different places. Have you ever flown up in Alaska, Sean?
Yeah, I've been to Alaska several times. The first time was we were doing we took 6 Epic LTs around the world, and we came through. We actually originally we were going to go into Petropavlovsk and then go over to Adak and then Anchorage, but when we were coming out of Petro, the weather was terrible in Adak, so we actually jumped back to Magadan and then shot over Anadyr up into Nome, landed into Nome, and then cleared customs there and kept on going. The next trip I had was really crazy. It was about a year and a half later, or 2 years later. I took a Pitts S2B from Seattle, Washington to Anchorage over the Alcan Highway, picked up a Pitts S2AE, and then ferried that back down the Alcan Highway. And then 2 weeks later, went back up to Anchorage, picked up that original Pitts, and they came back down, which involved all kinds of shenanigans because there's not quite enough fuel for a Pitts to actually make it all the way, and like putting jerry cans in the front seat, strapping them in, and landing, questionably legally at some gravel strips in Canada. Yeah, all kinds of fun stuff.
So, Arial, when you were flying up there and filming this, so you had already lived in California. So I think every pilot, every aviator has this just amazing dream of what flying in Alaska is like. I mean, we all want to be a bush pilot for like a week.
Yeah, for like a day.
Yeah, and there's actually a place in, I think it's Ireland, or maybe it's in Scotland, that they do the bush pilot experience for 1 week. You get to fly a Cub on big tires and go land in some gravel strips. I'm sure it's very safe and pre-planned. Yeah. But did you know at the time, like what a dream this was for every pilot out there?
No, I didn't, because I grew up with it, and it is not glamorous. I mean, me and my sisters were the one loading my dad's plane. So you're loading like triple mailers of pop. It's like those things are heavy, and it's -50. And you're loading eggs, dropping eggs. My parents are yelling at us. Like I was at it's just cold, and you're trying to get in as quick as you can and load as fast as you can. So for me, I didn't think other people had this dream of doing it until our show. I'm like, what? People actually want to come up and move from Florida to Alaska and be flying this treacherous weather. But I think it's super cool. It's awesome that people from all over the world have been interested in the lifestyle that we live. And it is you do get a big sense of gratification from doing it, because you're helping the people out in rural Alaska. The only way in and out of our village is by airplane. So you're taking people that are sick, you're bringing people their mail, you're bringing people food. And so you do get a big sense of pride by flying for remote airlines.
Wow. Yeah. A little bit of feedback actually from somebody in the chat room here. So Marie ZP says, that was a great story of how the show got started, Arial. We miss watching you and your family. Isn't that nice?
Oh. Thank you. And I should give a shout out to the creator, Tommy Baynard. He was the guy that I met on Wipeout. And he was super cool guy, and he just believed that we had a great story to tell. And and so me and him pitched it and got it going. But yeah, a lot of people don't know that, and it's not I'm not going to take credit for it, but then it was just a good collaboration between our family and Tommy.
So speaking of a great story, and I think, okay, so your dad would get mad if we said that you were the star of the show, but everybody loved watching Arial, and your oh my gosh, your positive attitude when things were just going crazy. But I think one of the most memorable points in the show was your first flight with John Ponce. And I think Matt's going to play out that a little snippet of that video. But do you still remember that day? And what was that like?
The solo flight, yeah.
My solo flight or my first flight with Ponce?
That was your first flight with John. Is I think what Matt's going to play out.
I'll be honest, I watched half of our first, our premiere, and then I went to the bar. Because I can't watch myself on TV. I watched it for 10 minutes, and I'm like, that's how I talk. That's how I walk. It looked like I have to constantly use the bathroom. And then so after that, our producers were like, you're not allowed to watch any of these episodes because you just rip yourself apart. So I don't know how they cut any of the episodes, people are like, you did this. I'm like, oh yeah, I did do that. And then so I flying with Ponce though, like, man, the best instructor. He made me so comfortable. He is like a brother. He became like one of my best friends. And he was just so patient with me. You have to, I mean, to teach this thing right here, like how to fly, it takes a lot of patience. And then like part of me, I do goof off a lot, but then he was like, hey, you have to like calm down, like be a little mature. Like, let's get in this together. And he would help me. We would go to these sandbars, and then we would bring all my study books. And because if I'm around people, like I get FOMO really bad, and I have to constantly be in conversations, and I want to go play with everyone. And so he would literally remove me from civilization and be like, okay, we're going to sit down on the sandbar, just me and you, and let's get through this chapter. And so, like, it was definitely because of Ponce that I got my license and actually got through ground school and everything.
Oh, that's the exact opposite experience of every private pilot who, not in a sandbar, had to sit in some 8-foot by 8-foot 1947 built room with a bunch of cut-off solo T-shirts with old Cheetos in the corner.
Well, if you would have stuck me in a room with a bunch of guys, I would have been like passing love letters to all of them, and I would have missed like all my like studies. so yeah, you have to. I know my strengths and my weaknesses, and definitely one of my weaknesses is just being around people and chatting too much. And I just love, and that's why I love like making TV and films, is because you're constantly learning about different ways of living and different cultures, and it blows my mind how like different people are, but how similar we all are at the same time. And I don't know, but yeah, flying with Ponce, so fun.
Yeah. So while obviously the airline era, Alaska, when you were there, obviously you said earlier you were kind of loading like loads of stuff onto aircraft and sort of the light aircraft and stuff. What was one of the most craziest things you ever had to load onto an aircraft?
Ooh, that's a hard one. We were constantly loading like just dogs and animals, coffins, which isn't that exciting. You know what? Like a big one that people started to do. We have like one restaurant in Northwest Alaska, like in our area, which is a pizza place. So people from different villages would order pizza, and then this would turn out to be like $100 pizza. I'm like, really? Do you guys want pizza that bad? But yeah, and so I
know how they feel. I'll be honest.
Yeah. But yeah, we didn't. I mean, you're loading essentials. There was a crap ton of diapers, a lot of pop, a lot of Doritos, a lot of ramen, a lot of milk, a lot of eggs. And I'm sorry if you're watching this and I dropped all your eggs, because that happened a lot. But just a lot of essentials that people need. So there wasn't really a lot of things that we were like, that's really weird. And I'm sure if it was weird, they had it wrapped up, and I didn't break those rules. I never looked in people's luggage and stuff. And so there were times where I could like jiggle boxes and like, I know what's in here, but couldn't open it.
There was an episode, Ariel, that you were in where you were on, I think it was one of your first solo flights, and the way the episode show it and stuff, I think you had a lot of crosswind when you were landing, and you're on your own, and it was really tense. You know, you're watching the program on telly, like, oh my god, Ariel, was it really as
it was worse. It was worse. Well, one, they had my mom mic'd on the ground, and that's if you rewatch that part, because I did watch a little solo clip on YouTube, but the whole time it's just beep, 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 because my mom is going crazy. And so I was doing my solo flight, so 3 takeoff and landings. My first 2, I was like, I can do this. Like, this is awesome. This is so cool. I'm in the plane by myself. Like what a feeling to be like, okay, I have my life in my hands. My dad can't come up here and rescue me. My mom can't come and like console me. Like, this is me. Like, I have to do this. And so, yeah, the first 2 were great. I'm coming around for the second one or the third land, or I think I was like, I just took off and I was coming up, and then I was turning like I think I was turning downwind, and then my radios died. Like something, like my radios quit working, and then the wind switched. And so and then you just get frazzled. So I didn't know what was going on. I'm like, why am I drifting so far away from like the runway? Why is it so far away now? I'm like, oh crap. And I'm trying to figure out how to get my radios working. And so I go and I tried to land, couldn't get to the runway. Like I was like, I cannot land this thing. So I went around again, and then I'm sweating, and I'm just like, oh crap, this is not good. And so like I come in, and I was just like, it's getting windier, so I'm just gonna lay this baby down. And so I go, like, I'm just like, and I'm just like crabbing almost, and then I'm just like, crap. And in the footage, though, I close my eyes. I'm just like, and then I'm like, oh my God. But then oh my God, the best feeling in the world was when it just like bounced, and then it was like, okay, not gonna like ruin this plane. I'm still alive. I'm still here. Like, and then, yeah, so that was scary. And that definitely humbled me, because those first two, I was like, I got this. This is super easy. Why do people make such a big deal about it? And then that third one, I was like, oh geez, like this is not good. So yeah, that was a little scary, but yeah. And so yeah, it was definitely not planned. And the producers were like, yeah, you want to go up and do a couple more? We need to get some other shots. And I'm like, nope, I am done for the day. Like I need to go and like wipe the sweat off of everything, and let's do something else.
You know what's funny is I think you just stole Sean's thunder, because Sean was going to talk to us about one of his maydays that he had as a Reno Air Race pilot. But Sean, that pretty much sums it up, right? You just kind of went, oh crap, close your eyes and bounce down the runway, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely. That's pretty
the
much
15-second version.
Oh my God, Sean, do you race the in Reno?
Yeah, I raced in the sport class at Reno. I've been racing there about 4 years, formation instructor, check pilot, and all that kind of fun stuff. I've been typically racing top of the silver, bottom of the gold, so 300 to 350 mile an hour range.
Oh, so cool. I wonder if I saw you. I've been there a couple times to watch Pete race the
Pete Zaccanino.
Pete Zaccanino.
Yeah, I love him. So we're always in his like pit, just like I'm the annoying one that's probably way too loud and excited. But,
I'm sure we've run into each other. You know, we always camp on the grounds there. We're right next to Camp Pete, so.
Oh yay!
We've definitely run into each other.
For next Reno, when it happens again, it's going to happen. We'll have a beer together.
Sounds great. Yeah, come on over to Team Havoc. We'll definitely hook you up with a beer or two.
Oh, awesome! Cool. Well, making it really sound that I love the drinks. Beer.
Anybody ever gets
sponsor this?
If anybody ever gets a chance to come out to Reno, there is the air racing, which, I don't know, it's a pretty good part of the day, but it's really all the background. It's the hanging out in the hangars. Reno is probably one of the most intimate aviation experiences you can have, where you can hang out with the fans, the crews, the pilots, and everybody. And then once the gates shut, there are some awesome after parties.
Okay,
yeah.
Armando, you do realize, Armando, you are now hooking us up for that, don't you? You realize that?
Absolutely. Yeah. We will do that. Sean and I will do that for you guys.
Armando's one of our star ramp guys, and you know the whole event wouldn't happen, especially in the sport class, without dedication to volunteers like himself. So yeah, there's somebody that can hook you up. It's him for sure.
Fantastic.
Yeah, and that is honestly the reason that we had to make the decision to cancel Reno this year. Is it is just like Oshkosh, just like Sun and Fun. It is volunteer driven, and you know it was just too much of a risk this year to put a lot of our retiree volunteers in that kind of personal risk. But so Ariel, everybody that listens to this show will have obviously watched the entire season, or the all seasons of Flying Wild Alaska, probably multiple times, probably have posters up on the wall. Kids still do that. But I actually wanted to talk to you about some of your efforts after the show. So a little bit about Native Shorts, you hosting Native Shorts, and then Into America's Wild, your choice how we want to do this. And something that's really important to us on this show is popping bubbles, right? Because we are just complete advocates of making sure that people get the help that they need. Especially, some of our partner podcasts have done some features on mental health and even alcoholism in aviation, and just these things that were normally taboo subjects. But I'd like for you to take a second to talk to us about popping bubbles and your efforts with that. But feel free to we'll start with native shorts because that was kind of the first thing that you did. So why was that project particularly important to you?
That one, well, my co-host Bird Running Water just is amazing, and he's been a good friend, and so he came up with the idea because he works with Sundance Institute's Native American and Indigenous program. And so I just love the concept because there's so many stories around the world told by Indigenous filmmakers that don't get seen. And so it's just a way to like just get some diversity out there and just show that like, man, there's some amazing storytellers all over like the Maori tribes in New Zealand, like just all over northern Canada. There's some from Ireland. Like there's just like such great storytellers. But so Native Shorts is just native short stories. I really was trying to pitch Native Pants for the season 4, and I was like, so we can do feature films and what we call Native Pants. But yeah, so that one is just fun, and I think it's just really important for all people to be able to share stories. And they're really cool, though. You could find them, I believe it's on fnxtv.com, or you just Google Native Shorts, and then you should be able to watch the episode. And there's an app to watch every... Yeah. Oh, cool. Awesome. Perfect.
Yeah, we'll put some links in the show notes. So
cool.
And you know, and at the same time that Flying Wild Alaska was happening, or at least airing, the whole Alaska thing was so just prevalent. And so we had some other sister shows that we won't mention their shows, but Alaska was featured heavily for a couple years up there. But one of the things that we saw in some of those other shows, I remember Alaska State Troopers was one of the shows, right? I loved that show. But that show particularly highlighted some of the challenges of living in remote areas, which kind of is one of the reasons you started popping bubbles, isn't it?
Yeah. So no, it is. And so one thing really quick. So our show, what was really important for our family and for our producers and our whole team was just to be super authentic and just to show how life is in rural Alaska. And it's not all penguins and polar bears. Like it's hard. It's like it's a hard lifestyle. I mean, you're isolated, you're in the middle of nowhere. Like it's just, I mean, the weather, the darkness, the lack of like good nutritious food, like there's so much. And so we wanted to just for it to be real. And I think our team did a really good job on keeping it like, it wasn't overproduced. There was, I think by season 3, we would have to like try to think of we wouldn't think of storylines, but we would be like, hey, I wonder if Ariel and her sister went to the cabin, what would happen? And so they'd be like, hey, you should invite your sister to go camping in your cabin this weekend. So it would be stuff like that. And that's as produced as it would get. And so, yeah, I'm really proud of how Flying Wild turned out. But I think there was an episode that talked about suicide. And so for me, I've lost over 30, I think I stopped counting at like 37 friends. I lost over half my class to suicide. And so when my best friend did it, I was just so confused because we like went to prom together. Like he was in college, had a girlfriend, so smart, very handsome, like charismatic. And then just one day decided to end his life. And so that just pushed me over the edge. And I just was fed up, and I'm like, we need to figure out like why this is happening to our people, why this is happening so often, like why? And the more I ask that question, the more you realize that no one knows the answer and still don't. But for me, in order to prevent suicide, you have to show people that life is worth living. And life is like a roller coaster. You're going to have some amazing high times and it's going to be so fun, but prepare yourself because you're going to be sad. But then in those low times, know that, man, put your hands up because it's going to be so exciting again. And just know that you're going to go up and down. But so for me, in order to prevent suicide, you have to show people that life is worth living. You have to show kids that, hey, like, look at me. I grew up in this little village, and now I'm living my dream. I want to be Eskimo Oprah, and I'm going to be Eskimo Oprah. Like no one's going to hold you back just because you're, like, from a small community, just because you look a certain way, just because you talk a certain way. And so the name came, I was talking with a news program in Canada when I was promoting it, but I was talking about how like all of us live in our own little bubble. We're scared to leave our village, to talk to people that look different from us, to talk to people that believe in different religions or politics, to try new things, to like be afraid. And we'd be so much happier if we just popped each other's bubbles. And so that's where the name came up. And yeah, now we do a lot of motivational speaking tours. I'm actually so excited because I'm teaming up with the company that does telehealth. And so now we're working on bringing free like therapy to the villages. So people, all you need is a phone and you could talk to someone, a professional, because we all need help. Like I don't wake up every day with like rainbows and Skittles coming out of like my nostrils. Like some days I'm just like a little bummed. And so I'm like, I want someone to talk to. And so it's that whole thing is like, it's okay to ask for help. We all need it. And yeah, and like for the little kids, it's like, man, have dreams, like set goals for yourself, like dream big and you'll have an awesome life. And then know like coping skills, like you're going to lose loved ones. You're going to break up with your boyfriend or girlfriend. You're going to like wake up on the wrong side of the day. And that shouldn't be the reason you end your life because it's hard. And so, yeah, I could go on and on, but I won't ramble anymore.
Yeah. I mean, know that. So I did a 21-year career in the U.S. Air Force, and we often asked the same questions ourselves. We would try to find patterns. We would try to find indicators. And largely we discovered that it wasn't that easy. Everybody has their own journey and everybody has their own path that leads them to that, that point in their lives. But so you've continued on, and you said like one of the things that you love doing is just highlighting how good it is to be alive. So and that, I'll let you talk about Into America as well, because we got to tie it to aviation somehow. So I did do a little bit of digging, and I found out that it was partially sponsored by United Airlines. So easy plug for United Airlines.
The people at United were so great too. We promoting the film for that short period that we did. I got to hang out with a lot of like the corporate United people, and they were really fun.
So, Ariel, Matt's got some questions that have come from our live chat room viewers.
Indeed, yeah. So, ironically, we'll start with another namesake. So, this guy's also called Matt Smith, so that's slightly odd. But there we are. This could get very confusing. So, his question actually is, when did you feel most in danger, and why? I presume you're sort of talking about like flying and things like that.
Flying? Yeah, I was like, flying or life? Very different.
I mean, we'll take answers for both. That's fine as well.
So flying, my solo flight, that was actually pretty terrifying. My cross country flight, that one was I got just way off course, and then again, like I don't know, my plane had horrible radio comms, and so that one I lost course, and then my radios went bad again. So that was a little scary, but I just knew to go and find the ocean. And then, because villages are all along the ocean, and so I figured that one out. But that was pretty terrifying. Other than that, I've been pretty fortunate to be pretty safe up in the air. And I make it seem like I'm pretty dingy and like doofus, but when I'm in the plane, I put my big lady pants on and try to be professional. So I mean, I need to at some point, and so yeah, and I want to live, and so I know how dangerous flying could be, especially in Alaska.
Oh,
and
yeah.
So I definitely take it seriously.
I bet. Graham is asking in the chat room, saying, what's the most interesting place that you've ever landed, both as a passenger and a pilot?
Well, I mean, I'm still a private pilot, so I haven't landed in anything like just at our cabin. Like we have a little cabin out in the boonies in Alaska near our village. It's like a 25-minute plane ride from our village. So landing there was pretty cool. It's just a little dirt landing strip. Landing with my dad in the mountains is the best thing ever. You're just like, there's no way you could land on that. And you're like, oh my God, we just landed. How'd that happen? But, so landing with my dad is pretty phenomenal though. He's such a good pilot, and and he's always like just constantly looking for landing strips, sandbars and little like mountain ridge lines. And yeah, I just love flying with my dad. Oh, wait, time out. There was another fun one too. The North Captiva outside of Florida. That was cool because I shot a little thing with M0A, plug for M0A. It's just like, the water is so blue and it's so pretty and it's warm. So, and you're landing on this tiny little island, which was really fun. So that was pretty neat.
Wow. Richard King is asking, Ariel, is Jim still flying his Cessna 180?
Oh yeah, that's his baby every day. I was just with him like a week ago, and he had to fly his 207 into Anchorage, and he swapped it out for his 180, and now he has awesome like bush tires on it. But yeah, he won't let me go near that thing without him. I know. I think he thinks if I just stare at it, I'm going to ruin it. So I'm not allowed near that plane without him.
Oh, no.
To be fair, I think a lot of pilots that own an airplane, that's how the case is. Be like, nobody's actually allowed to touch this airplane but me.
It was actually funny though. So I'm doing another show, or it's just an episode on a show called Know Her Name, and we're doing an episode on Amelia Earhart.
Oh,
and
wow.
so we needed some footage like quickly with me and my dad. So we're in there. He only has one yoke. Like the other one fell off. And so I'm like, Dad, I need it to like sort of look like I'm flying. And he's like, well, just jump over on my side. We're in the air. And I'm like, Dad, and there's duct tape all over because there's holes everywhere in his plane. So yeah, my dad's flying around with like one yoke, holes in his plane. And I'm like, I think you could probably afford to maybe like get a new yoke and like some like better tape or something.
Gaffer tape, that'll mend anything. If you they say if you can't mend it with gaffer tape, you can't mend it at all. That's the end of it.
I grew up like sorry.
I was going to say the alternative is lease it back to a flight school, and then it'd fit right in with the rest of the training fleet.
The planes. Yeah, he's so funny. I just grew up. I mean, he grew like just duct tape everywhere. Like I was saying when I was younger, like it's so cold where we're at, but he didn't get a heater for his plane. Me and my sisters would have to get our hair dryers and go and sit and like heat up his engine with a hair dryer before he went to work. And that was like part of our job before going to school, was to go and like thaw out his engine.
Wow. I mean, just crazy. We've got one more question, a couple more questions, sorry, from the chat room. So this is from Tony saying, question for Ariel, what's the formula for making entertaining TV whilst keeping it realistic? There's a challenge for you.
Yeah. Well, just being authentic. Like, I think everyone has a story to tell. And if you're curious enough about, I think, people in the world, you could pull out the stories and learn from other people. But like for me, it's just like, I know, like, one, our family was in a unique situation because my dad and mom's airline is so essential. And so like you need good characters, you need a like unique situation, and and then you need a good format for the story to be told. And so Discovery Channel was the right timing. It was and this like like I said, our show wasn't overproduced. We were honest and we just had fun. Like, I love my parents. It sounds so corny and cheesy, but they are like my best friends. My sisters are my best friends. Our pilots, I'm so lucky I have like over 70 brothers and sisters. Like most of our pilots ended up living with us while they're doing their training. So I'm just lucky to have such a great family and amazing friends and people that challenge me and people that would tell me to like tone it down if I get too like excited about things. And my dad definitely brings me back down to earth because he says I'm overconfident in everything that I do. And so he's like, man, you're an addict to adrenaline, which I am. And so it's just like, I constantly have to just like, okay, am I chasing this feeling or what's going on with me? But yeah, I think that's, to go back to your question, you need good characters, you need good stories, you need a unique situation for people, and then you need the right timing is everything too.
And I couldn't agree more. It's a difficult one, isn't it, really? Because you want it to be entertaining, but of course, it's very common, isn't it, for things to be over-dramatised or, careful editing, if you like, to make things perhaps appear differently to how it actually happened, things like that.
Yeah, and also my dad got the final say in the footage because, he's the president of this big company. He cares so much about his employees. So he needed to make sure, like, is everything legal? Are the producers pushing you guys too hard to get a good story? Like, number one thing is safety in our flying, like in the airline business. And so like he was really good at being like, nope, they're not doing that. Nope, not doing that. Sure, we could do that, but let's do it this way. Okay, that's a really good idea, but it's not legal. Let's figure out a different way to tell this story. So he was great at doing just managing like stories versus safety versus like all of that. And also like my parents, like no one in our family wanted, like we weren't like chasing to be a movie star, or like none of us fight or are dramatic, and like we're not, we like each other, and like we don't argue. Like if we disagree with things, we figure out a civil way to like overcome like different obstacles. And so I mean, in some ways, like we're the worst family to be on TV, because we're not gonna like backstab each other, or like me and my mom, like, geez, number one, you would never want to fight with my mom. So we knew that very early on, not to make her mad. And then my dad is the most calm human being on the planet. Like you're never going to get him to like get riled up. And so, it was weird that like that people liked watching us, because like in our eyes, we are sort of just like this or normal. But I think the storylines like were all really interesting, because it is a unique place that we live in, and I'm like really happy that I grew up where I grew up.
Well, honestly, Ariel, the story. I mean, we could we needed to extend the show by at least 3 hours, I think, and just have you
Invite me back.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we'll
Anytime.
definitely have you back.
Absolutely,
Yeah, definitely have you back. But no, it's been so nice to talk to you, Aaron, and I really, on behalf of all the team, thanks for coming on and joining us and taking time out of your beautiful day there.
No, thank you guys so much. And I'll plug one more thing. There's a new cartoon coming out on Fox,
Ooh.
And I'm a little voice. It's called The Great North. And so that one, we just got picked up for our second season, but the first season should start airing in the next like couple weeks, I believe. But that's my one plug for right now. And then we have another animated series coming out as well. I guess people think I have a weird voice, and so I've been doing a lot with
not weird, interesting voice, not weird, interesting.
Interesting voice. So now, I'm getting into animation, and I'm just I love like getting kids just excited, and I like making people laugh, and so so that's where that's going. And I'm gonna keep flying. I still have my private license. I still go flying when I go home, and all my buddies have Super Cubs, and we'll go flying, and I'll start posting more pictures of those adventures.
So before we go and let you go, get back to your busy day on the beach, Ariel. One last question.
I'm working right now.
One last question, and we'll let Armando ask. It's the all-important last question that we ask all our guest pilots and guests that we have on the show.
We do very rarely have two guests on the same show. So Sean, earmuffs.
Earmuff Sean.
Okay.
Ariel, if money was no object, and you could fly any aircraft in the world, past, present, or future, what aircraft would that be?
Yeah, man, I'm in love. I like the Beaver. Like those are so fun. My dad used to have this Beech 18. That he used to that one. That I would love to fly that plane, or an Albatross. Just to be able to take all your buddies and load up the Albatross with all your friends, coolers of beer, and then go land on like the lake and just hang out and jump off the wings and have a party, and then have your friend fly back. That'd be so fun. But yeah, I love all those three planes. I think would be my top three. I don't need to go super fast. I like to be able to land in fun places and be able to like carry some friends with me.
I like your style. All three of those are radial engine twins. Except for the
Happy days.
Oh my gosh, that's great. What a wonderful answer.
Yeah.
So Ariel, on behalf of all the team here at PTUK, a big thanks for coming on the show.
Quick, how can they follow you on social media and all that kind of thing?
I was getting to that bit. Don't panic. Yeah, so where can...
I thought you weren't going to ask this question.
No, where can... If anyone doesn't know where you are at the minute on social media, where can people follow you on social media?
It's all pretty simple. It's just at Arial Tweto, and Tweto is with one E, Tweto. It's Norwegian. It's supposed to be Tweto.
Excellent choice, Armando, and for me as well, it's definitely up there, my top favourite there. And I'm the same as you. I remember switching on to the Discovery Channel and absolutely being well and truly hooked to that series when it was on there. Loved it, absolutely loved it. And it was great to see her as well, Armando, when she actually got her pilot's license during the show. It was really good. So, Matt, we're going to go to you next over in the studio. What was your highlight or favourite part of the year?
Well, one of the series that I'm most loving being part of is the Plain Truth segment that we've been doing with Captain Al, and I'm delighted to say that they're going down really well, and as I say, it's a personal favourite of your father's at the end of the day, so we have to keep doing them, if only for that reason, do we not? Yeah, one of the things that I really enjoyed from that series, which started this year, was obviously Captain Al's explanations are always fantastic, but on one particular episode we were joined, it was certainly to myself and Carlos, a gentleman who quite often deputises, shall we say, to do the forecasting for our local BBC station, Look East. And yeah, basically myself, Captain Al and Dan Holley had a lovely chat all about weather. Hello everyone, and welcome to another Plain Truths, and this week we're going to be talking about weather. That's quite a broad subject, isn't it? Joining me, as always, is my friend, your friend. It is the legend that is Captain Al. Hi, Captain Al.
A very good evening, Matt.
Thanks for joining us, as always. And I'm delighted to say that joining us again this week is the lovely chap that is Dan Holley. Hi, Dan.
You're too kind, Matt. Good evening. How are you?
I'm living life's eternal dream every single day. There we are. So now we can't have access to an actual trained meteorologist and not talk about weather. So the question that I have for you gentlemen this evening is weather. How is that data collated, and then how is it turned into the charts that I know that Al has to use to decide essentially what route they're going to take, avoiding things like thunderstorms. Now, I appreciate this is a really broad subject here, but in sort of like languages that very stupid people like me can understand, how is the data, I know it's data that is put together, if you like, to produce what you turn into maps, but basically what is the process to generate the forecast that we see on the telly?
Yeah, so basically we need measurements. That comes obviously from aircraft, but also quite a lot from weather balloons. They go up twice a day in many locations around the world. There's about 5 locations in the UK and 2 in Ireland that go up at midnight and midday, and they measure the temperature, the pressure, humidity and so forth at every level, going all the way up to the top of the troposphere, which is the lowest layer of the atmosphere where all the weather happens. So you've got weather balloons, you've got aircraft, you've got buoys floating out over the sea, which are constantly taking measurements. Land-based weather stations, there's loads of them around many parts of Europe in particular, and also parts of North America. And then you've got things like radar data, which is primarily looking at sort of where it's raining. That gets fed into some models. Satellite data as well, constantly monitoring from space all the various things that are going on around the world as well. So lots and lots of different data sets. They all get fed into essentially a computer model. There are many different computer models, all run by the different national Met agencies around the world as well. And even here at WeatherQuest, we run our own computer model primarily focused on the UK. So all of this observational data gets fed into a numerical weather prediction model, and basically a bunch of calculations are then run using this data to try and then simulate what the weather will do going forward in time. But we always say your forecast is only as good as the data you actually put into it at the beginning. So if you're missing a lot of data right now, then we won't have a clear understanding as to what's going on right now in order to then work out what's going to happen further down the line. So observations are crucial. Run these calculations forward, and ultimately you get some output at the other end, again another data set telling you what's going to happen at any location around the world at so many hours further ahead into the future.
So that data that you've essentially collated and fed into a machine, how does that then turn into the forecast that we all see on television? And I know you do a little bit of deputising for our local Look East weather here in the east of England. So I mean, how do you go from that data, if you like, to predicting what's going to happen, say, tomorrow?
Yeah, so the data from these computer models comes out. They usually run about 4 times a day. So every 6 hours we get new data coming in. It comes in what we call grid format or netCDF. They're just basically different formats for data sets. And from that we can then run scripts to be able to take that data and plot it into a map form, so that then we can see what these models are suggesting where the low cloud will be, where the showers and thunderstorms may develop, and so forth. And then from these maps, we are then able then to see the progression of these weather features across the UK, or indeed elsewhere around the world as well. So we would use these maps that come from the models to make a forecast, both in a visual sense, such as on TV, but also then to write them into scripts for radio and for newspapers and that sort of thing as well. And obviously this data is crucial for other sectors such as agriculture and indeed aviation as well.
Indeed, and while we're talking about aviation, that information presumably is crucial to you, Al, when it comes to deciding where you're going to, what route you're going to take. For example, if you're flying to, let's say, Hungary.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, an awful lot of this is delegated to computer flight planning. So there are a variety of elements to be considered. First of all, the weather at the point of departure, the en route weather, and the weather at the destination. So, for example, the weather at the point of departure, if it's particularly foggy, then there are going to be delays in departure because the number of aircraft movements will be substantially less than in good visibility. Then the en route weather, well, that's a couple of factors. Optimizing the route to make use of the upper atmosphere winds. So if we can tag along a jet stream, so that will be a column of fast moving air that will be pushing us along, so increasing our speed through the air, thereby reducing the time and the amount of fuel that we burn. Or conversely, if there are headwinds, trying to minimize the impact that they might take. And as we've talked about in other aspects, that's all three-dimensional. So you've got to think vertically and laterally, because just deviating 50 or 60 miles laterally could be the difference between a 60-knot headwind and a 10-knot tailwind. And similarly, in a vertical profile. Then there's the considerations of significant weather en route, so thunderstorms, turbulence, icing is a big factor. Less so for jet aircraft that are typically flying at high altitudes, but when we have to descend into the lower atmosphere, icing is a consideration. And then weather at destination, so whether it be windy, as we've experienced in recent days here in the UK, that can have a significant effect. We had last year we had Storm Kira that had quite a phenomenal effect on aviation in the UK and in the near continent. I was lucky or unlucky, depending on which side of the fence you sit on, to be flying on one of the days of Storm Kira. So that was quite entertaining, to say the very least. Then you have, snow, ice, fog, probably outside of the realms of meteorology, of plagues of locusts. But
they don't predict locusts, honestly. I mean, come on.
No, but there are factors that would be reported that are outside of typical meteorology. In Met reports for aviation would be smoke. So if you operating somewhere to an airport that's being adversely affected by smoke, so forest fires or industrial fires, they would be in the Met report. And the Met observations for aviation are done half hourly. And as Dan mentioned, the simulations, if you like, the modeling that's done, that's updated 4 times a day, we use those updates in flight for updated upper winds. So if the wind model changes quite significantly, we'll update those in flight so that we get a real-time update as to how the winds are going to affect us for the flight. Typically across Europe, they don't change a lot. Once or twice they have changed by a couple of minutes in flight time. There's an awful lot. And ever increasingly at airports these days, Met observations are actually done by automatic means. So unfortunately, it used to be the job of air traffic controllers to go out and do the Met observations. They're increasingly done automatically. But weather and aviation go hand in glove with each other. It's quite a big factor in what we do.
and severe weather is a challenge. But so is forecasting, for example, the location of thunderstorms. I'd imagine, Dan, that's quite a challenge to accurately predict the start and end time and geographic location of a thunderstorm.
Yeah, that's right. And recently in the UK, we've had a whole week of active thunderstorms. And as you say, trying to pinpoint exactly where they'll form is quite crucial. And worth stressing, I guess, the models we've talked about here, as I say, every different Met agency runs their own model, and each of those models has slightly different physics that's used, slightly different equations. So actually the output that comes out the other end may differ slightly between each model. So, we look at about 10 different models, I guess, and they run every 6 hours as well. And we are trying to make a forecast from all of these different models and trying to come to some sort of consensus of what the most likely outcome is going to be. But one model may have a thunderstorm over Manchester, for example, whereas another one may have it over Birmingham. So it's trying to come up with the most likely scenario. Is it going to be Manchester? Is it going to be Birmingham? Or is it somewhere in between? So these models trying to pinpoint where these thunderstorms are. But as a forecaster, you use, I guess, sort of experience over the years as to which of these models tends to handle certain situations better. And then that may sway your decision as to which one you perhaps favor to drive the story going forward in time. But when it comes to thunderstorms, we often describe it as a bit like a pan of water on a stove, for example, on the hob. If you turn the hob on and heat that water, bubbles are going to appear at some point, but you don't quite know exactly where the first bubble is going to appear. And it's the same with convection and thunderstorms. The risk is there. The atmosphere is primed for those to develop. You don't quite know exactly where they are. So quite often you're looking for surface features if they're what we call surface-based thunderstorms. And that is that they are driven by what's going on at ground level. So the temperature is rising during the day. We get what we call wind convergence, which is where if the surface pattern is quite slack, the winds may come together in certain areas, and that coming together of the winds forces some air to rise, and that's where you sometimes generate thunderstorms. And that's particularly crucial over high ground, for example. You quite often see these showers and storms developing over hills and mountains. So that's the main thing you can look at. You can say, yeah, I think the Chilterns probably will develop these today. And then obviously on top of that, you've got to then work out, if they develop here, where will the steering winds blow them, and will they then drift perhaps close to an airport further down the line? So there's lots to play for, and quite often when there are thunderstorms in the forecast, it tends to be a bit more broad brush. You can highlight certain areas where you think they are most likely to develop, so certain parts of counties, for example. But you couldn't say specifically, I think there will be one in Manchester at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. You would probably say something like, there's a risk of them between, say, 1 o'clock and 5 o'clock. And yeah, one may turn up at 3 o'clock, but at least you sort of broaden that risk just in case one were to develop slightly early or come in slightly later in the day.
Or if you live where we do, you get very excited because it says there's going to be thunderstorms, and then you get one clap, and then that's literally it, and you're devastated for the rest of the day. But that's the joys of living on the Norfolk-Suffolk border, I suspect. So
Dan, sorry, I was going to say, Dan, how do you feel about whether forecast should be, if you like, the pint glass half full or half empty? Because one of the challenges that we face in aviation, obviously we have coded forecasts because they all go back to teletype machines, and aviation really hasn't advanced very much. So we're still quite regimented in our coding of
is it like the shipping forecast, is it?
Well, very much so, yes. So we have, prob 30, so a 30% chance. So we will quite often see in the forecast for, say, for example, just about every airport in the UK, 30% chance of the worst weather that you've ever had in your life. And it will be just for every airport. So it's always been, it's a fine balance, of course, because as a forecaster, you're only as good as your last forecast. It's a bit like being a pilot and landings. So, we're in the UK. We're very minded of a very famous weather forecaster who went on national TV and said there is no hurricane. It's not going to happen.
Oh, poor Michael Fish. He'll never be allowed to live that down, will he?
quite clearly, if he'd gone the other side of the pint glass and said, yeah, absolutely, as a country, we're going to be destroyed by this, this hurricane. There is that happy ground in the middle. But one of the risks in being unduly negative in forecasting is that you just create this layer of what we call Prob 30 tempo, and we just go, yeah, it's not going to happen. It's a Prob 30 temporarily, and it's just, you might as well just have omitted it from the forecast. So I was just puzzled as if you were a half full or half empty forecaster.
I was always taught at the beginning of my career by Jim, my old boss, that especially when it comes to the tourism industry, Easter in particular, that's considered the beginning of the sort of tourism season, if you like, in the UK. To always be very careful about how you word the forecast around that time, but really any time during the year, and to be sort of unbiased. So, some people may want rain and others may not. So we tend not to sway either side, really. We just tell it like it is. And if we think there's a risk of showers, we will mention them, but perhaps not mention them too much, so to make it sound like a negative forecast. But I guess it depends on whether we felt that risk was sort of, if there's a 10% chance of a shower, then we would heavily stress most places will stay dry and miss those showers. Whereas if we felt like there was an 80% chance or most of the region would see them, then we would probably go a bit more heavy on the shower side of things. So, I can certainly understand whenever you see Prop 30 in your TAFs and so forth, that, you see that all the time. And so it almost gets into sort of a cry wolf syndrome, doesn't it? Because it
does. Yeah, I mean, like I say, an awful lot of the time I just go Prop 30 tempo. We'll ignore that because and you will see it. Just about every UK airport has this, Prop 30 tempo, 1,500 meters in heavy rain. And you go, okay, right, but we can either work on a basis that, we could be exceptionally unlucky and every airport is going to be out of limits in the UK. So where are we going to go to? Because they've all got the same forecast.
And you can't go to France because they're on strike. And,
Now, the French are quite interesting, actually. The French in their aviation forecast, they will forecast the maximum temperature.
Oh, okay.
And they will actually give you temperature forecasts for the day, which is quite interesting. And very few other places in the world will do that. But the French are quite good at forecasting temperature.
Oh, well,
interesting. Just a bit of...
every day is a school day. Now you've mentioned this equated way that you receive the data when you're in. So presumably, when you're receiving some kind of how do you receive the updates of weather when you're actually in the air? Because presumably you can't get 4G signal and stuff up there. So how are you receiving the weather data in flight?
Well, we're fortunate in that there are satellites.
Okay. And
we're also fortunate that over land masses we have pretty good VHF radio coverage. So we have data link. So, the aircraft are not connected to the internet per se, but we're connected to a commercial organization called CETA, who provide all sorts of data to airlines. And one of the data streams that they provide is weather. So via CETA, we can update the en route winds, and we can also get updates of the terminal area forecasts and the METARs, which are the actual MET reports. So the METARs are done every half hour. In the UK, they're done at 20 past and at 10 to the hour. In other parts of the world, they do them on the hour. And we can also receive the ATIS broadcast as well via data. So we're reasonably well connected.
And is there much of a... has there been many scenarios where you've actually had to change your route based on the data that you've received in flight?
Not really, because what we don't have in my airline is the ability to update the significant weather charts. Because we don't have access to the internet per se. Lots of aircraft do. So Pip at SafeJets, he's got, the whole singing, whole dancing internet. So he can get real-time updates of significant weather. To be honest, in Europe, they don't change an awful lot. I know in the United States, they're a bit more proactive in reporting weather phenomena, especially turbulence. So there's a bit more pilot reporting of weather phenomena there. It probably is a bit more relevant if you're flying halfway around the world. And when I used to do that, we would quite routinely, leave somewhere in the Southern Hemisphere, having no idea what the forecast was actually going to be for London, because when we were leaving, the forecast for our arrival time actually hadn't been produced. We've got a little bit better in the UK now, in that we're producing, and this has only happened probably in about the last 10 years, 24-hour forecasts or 18-hour forecasts for the bigger airports. Most of the forecasts are either 8 or 12 hours. So if you're doing a 10-hour flight and the forecast only has an 8-hour validity, then you can see the issues.
Wow. Well, absolutely fascinating subject. Dan Holley, Captain Alf, thank you very much. Now, we couldn't do a review of the Year Show without allowing our wonderful producer to pick his favourite segment from this year's shows. Unfortunately, John is a little bit camera shy, as everyone knows. But he actually chose an interview we did in episode 314 with Peter Collings. Now, Peter Collings is a guy who inspects engines to make sure that they're serviceable, and he was on an episode with Andy from the A320 podcast. And as you can imagine, there were some amazing conversations going on between those guys. But also, one of the things that John is most proud about is our fantastic YouTube audience. And let's be honest, guys, you often have far better questions than we do to ask our fantastic guests. So yes, John's choice is an interview from really when the pandemic first broke out back in April, I believe, and that is Peter Collings. Yeah. So Peter, actually, we're starting to get some questions in from the chat room for you here. So this one's from Tony. Yes, he's saying, question for Peter. We know modern jet engines are more efficient, but with numerous high-profile engine failures, do you think modern jets are less reliable than their predecessors?
It's a good question, Tony. Yeah. So, I mean, you look at things like CFM 56, V2500, and they kind of carry on quite nicely. Airbus 737 and so on, and then you look at some of the Trents and you think for a company like Rolls-Royce, who I used to work with, and my grandparents, World War II, they were typists in the office when the Lancaster bomber came in Derby, where I'm from, and you think, well, what's going on? You know, you've got the LEAP engine, the rotorbow issue on startup, and all sorts of little bits and pieces here, there and everywhere. I think what's happening is that people are trying to push things forward really quickly. If you look at anything, you look at the last 100 years compared to the last 300 or 400 years, and the rate of increase in technology and engineering increases massively. And I think there's a risk that things can go a little bit too fast. But at the same time, there are some advances. They're trying to make things lighter and stronger and, of course, more efficient, I think. So I think... If I was to sum it up, I'd say let's not reinvent the wheel, guys. Let's look at the things that do work, keep using them. Reliability. The turbine engines are possibly one of the most reliable engines. They're just used. They don't get much wear, really. Unlike a traditional piston engine. So, but the level of safety, the level of checks that are done by everybody, pilots, engineers, and everything, you're in good hands, really. So that's what I will say.
Actually, we've got another question from Tony here. We'll stick with him if we may. So he's saying, do you find that the higher mounted engines on the T-tails suffer less wear or damage?
I think in terms of ingesting FOD from the ground, so for example, gravel, stones, when you apply power, most runways and aprons are pretty clear, but you only need to get to a certain airport and get too close. It's not even a case of getting too close as the wind picks up, sandy environments. I suppose there's an argument that the higher mounted engines get less, ingest less, but as part and parcel of my job, most engines I see are on wing rather than on tail. There's a handful business jets and things, and nothing really massively noticeable in terms of the differences with FOD ingestion and so on. And I think that's credit to airport authorities keeping the places fairly clear. But I would say there's a good argument, certainly if you're landing on slightly rough runway, where there is loose material, as let's say you're doing some kind of extra terrain flight. You know, they're testing smaller jets at the moment to see if they can land them on wet grass at the moment. This is one of the things they're trying to do, and they really put them through the paces. And they, you know, mud and water goes down the engines. A friend of mine is involved with that locally. He actually is an agricultural worker, and he sprays the runways, the grass, to get it waterlogged. And that's an interesting job. So, yeah, I think you could probably argue there's a bit less, but you need to remember that the power, I'm sure you appreciate the power from these jets, the intakes. You know, take a 757. If you're stood near where the nose wheel is, or in front of the nose when full power's applied, you're going down that engine. There's no two ways about it. So the height, you know, it is a factor, but basically anything close to those, out of those safety zones is going to go down the engine, unfortunately.
When you're doing those borescopic inspections on the engines, Peter, with the little cameras, how long is it? What's the general time it takes to do, like, say, a CFM 56?
So it depends on the sort of check you're doing. If you're doing, for example, what we call a hot section, which is a very typical check that you might do on a regular basis, either because it's something that has to be done or because there is a known defect that has a repeat inspection cycle on it, which could be hours or cycles of that engine. And so a hot section inspection, 2 to 3 hours maybe, depending. A full engine inspection really depends on obviously on the size of the engine, because remember, you're looking at every single blade in that engine, so you could be looking at 2,000 to 4,000 blades maybe. And so CFM 56 is best part of a day, really. It depends how you do it, and it really is fundamentally down to how well the aircraft is prepared before you get there, before we arrive to do the job, and what sort of setup you've got. If you have to do it outside, I've had to do it outside in whichever storm it was. The last one, I was outside doing a borescope inspection, and you have to be very careful, because if it gets too windy, you can't carry on. So hot sections, 2 to 3 hours. You have to video record the whole inspection. It's a requirement. And a full engine inspection, a big CF6 engine, very tricky to inspect because the ports are all over the place, is going to be a day or more to do a full engine inspection. And then, of course, you find something, you find a defect that's got to be measured. You have to consult the maintenance manual. You have to make a decision. Can this fly or not? What sort of repeats is going to be required? Do I need to contact the manufacturer? And that cascade effect means it takes much more time, and that can have a knock-on effect to the airline and the logistics and the planning. So, yeah.
Nev, and over that cross there in Buckinghamshire, any questions from you for Peter?
Yeah, I was going to ask him actually, Peter, how with you were talking about the Trent 1000s and all the rest of it. Obviously, it's all about fuel saving now, isn't it? It's all about efficiency of the engine. We were talking about reliability, but actually, of course, these are into incredible numbers of ETOPS. You hear about 270 minutes ETOPS and longer. What are you involved with those ETOPS inspections of the aircraft, of the engines when they're on the aircraft as well?
Sometimes, if I'm honest, most of the work that I have been doing has been short to medium haul jets. Well, the shortest haul sort of A319, 320, 73. There are, again, there's this whole swathe of different checks that you have to do for ETOPS, and do you need an APU or not? If you're going ETOPS, you're going to probably need to have that APU. And of course, ferry flights, if there's a known issue, you can get a special permission to take an aircraft outside and around to get it to where it needs to go to have the work done. But I'm not really greatly involved with the ETOPS side of things.
Do you inspect the APU as well? Is that part of your job?
It's just another jet engine. And although it's less frequent, typically we'll get a request for both engines on twin engine and the APU as well. So
I'm going to allow myself just a supplementary question.
Yeah, sure.
As they say in the 5 o'clock briefings. Why is it that APUs seem to have a built-in unreliability. I don't know how many aircraft I've been on. They've had to do a cross-bleed start because the APUs failed. It seems to be quite a lot. I don't know whether it's just me or whether that is the case.
Well, I think that the other chaps will probably know. I mean, they do a lot of hours. When you look at APU maintenance manuals, some of them will give you limits that you can allow. For example, a crack in a blade, you're allowed a certain number of 0.0045 inches or something. Others simply say, if you find damage, remove it and get a new one. But my suggestion would be that they're often started up and they're run for long periods of time, shut down, started up again, shut down, and it tends to be quite a quick turnout. That's my theory anyway.
Yeah, so blaming the flight crew, I think that's...
No.
We don't look after them. That is the base of it. We do not look after them. When we shut them down, on a 40-minute turnaround and then start them up again. That's not healthy. It doesn't have the required coolant time to allow the temperatures to dissipate. So that really messes them up. And then as well, people don't shut them down properly, especially on the 320. If you shut them down, then just turn the batteries off, it leaves the inlet flap open, and that's not good for them, which I'm sure Peter's seen many times before.
Yeah.
I've got a couple of questions for you, Peter.
Yeah, please.
Have you worked on the LEAP engine?
No, I haven't actually. I've got a number of colleagues who do, but I haven't specifically worked. I know of it, but I haven't worked on it myself.
For the fan blades, what sort of different checks would you have to do, because they are horrible composite things?
It's a blisk. It's out of my area of expertise really, because of this blisk. If anybody listening, it's a sort of continual piece of engineering creativity, probably worth upwards of $250,000, and the rest, just for that one element. Generally, fan blades are inspected as part of some of the, I don't know if it's C checks or whatever, but they will take them out and have a really good look on all of the aircraft. But with the blisk, of course, it's unique, and this is all new stuff in terms of boroscoping. It's all brand new stuff. It's a pretty much brand new engine, and a lot of people are getting issues where they have to, for example, do a 360-degree check of a particular area of that engine, because normally you put the boroscope in and you turn the engine around and see the blades. So this is more the internal side, but there are issues where people are looking at the maintenance manual and saying, we're going to get stuck in the engine if we go down there. So it's all quite new stuff, and the maintenance manual is being changed as we go. But the blisk, there's certainly a very detailed visual inspection, and you'll be getting a non-destructive testing taking place. There's all sorts of technologies using sound and X-ray that they can look through the blades, and that is a very advanced area, definitely eddy currents and so on. So, yeah.
And what sort of materials are they using in the core of the engine? Because when we start the things up, a CFM 56, bang, straight away, no matter what temperature it is, it fires up. Whereas we've got to wait for the core to... It just says in the book, stabilize. It can take anywhere between 30 seconds to a minute and a half before we get light up. What sort of reason is that?
I think it started when, I don't know if it was that or another CFM, when they initially, might have been the V2500 actually, when they initially released it, it was taking 7 minutes. But basically what it is rotor bow. They had this issue with unequal cooling. So it has to go through this process of basically what you would call dry motoring, air being pushed through. And it's purely and simply just to equalize the temperature. It's a FADEC is sitting there kind of going, yeah, I think we're about ready. Yeah, we're good. Fuel goes in, ignition comes on. There you go. So really it's just a stabilization thing, and it's rotor bow.
So is that an automatic version of what they had to do on Concorde to debore the engine?
I suppose so. Not familiar with that, but possibly. I don't know. It's done controlled by FADEC, so and these things change over time. They have to get things just right, but. Don't know about that one. I wasn't aware. Bore the engine.
I remember seeing the crews on Concorde actually holding the start sequence at a lower N1 before they would allow it to fully rotate.
Yeah, and I'm sure the Airbus or Aerospatial called it deboing the engine.
Yeah. Yeah, very good. Very interesting.
When you're doing these
When you're doing the inspections, Peter, on the engines, if you find a blade, a compressor blade or whatever that is faulty or cracked, what are the implications in respect to kind of time and cost? Is it an engine off, or can that be done in situ?
So, first of all, the maintenance manual is written very carefully by the manufacturers because they know certain issues, certain defects can be left for a certain amount of time before a certain action has to be taken. So this is all pre-planned. You have very clear instructions in the maintenance manual as to what course of action to take. So, for example, take a radial tip crack on a high-pressure compressor blade. So it would need to be measured. You would measure it. You'd work out which part of the blade is cracked, which area of the blade is cracked, which section it is. You'd measure the crack and its location, its direction. Is it an axial crack? Is it a radial crack? And you then consult the maintenance manual and you decide what limits that is in. Some defects you tend to see a lot of and they're quite acceptable. Other defects, for example, look at the low pressure turbine. Why is that important? Well, it turns the fan. What does the fan do? It produces 80% of the thrust. It's critically important. You see the tiniest little defects on that, and typically you're taking that engine off. If you take the engine off, you're going to be looking at least £1 million to sort that out. There are some repairs that can be done. It says in the maintenance manual, some conditions can be repaired using a thing called a borrow blender. And what that is a boroscope kit, which has, if you imagine a dental drill, and you go in, and with this very fine dental drill, you blend away the crack. So if you imagine you have a blade and it's got a crack in it here, small crack, what you would do is create a curve with that on the front of that blade. And it has to, there again, at maintenance manual limits, and then that condition is said to be repaired. But anything else apart from that, you can't remove blades. The engine has to come off. And a lot of airlines and lease companies have spare engines, so they swap them over. And that one has to go off to the workshop for an overhaul.
Peter, along those lines, kind of a follow-up question to that.
Yes.
Is when we were at Oshkosh this year, we interviewed Tammy Jo Schultz, who was on Southwest 1380, and that NTSB report said that the ultimate cause was a failed fan blade. Now, EASA was actually the first one to issue an emergency airworthiness directive. Now, you said sometimes it's over £1 million to take an engine off or something to do those inspections. What about when there is an emergency airworthiness directive like that as a result of a report? How did the airlines tackle that?
Well, they simply have to do it. They have to, from a sort of management logistics dispatch level, they have to get their fleet, because you can imagine, I'm sure you do appreciate, that these aircraft have to be sort of ferried around the place. They'll do this sector, then they go in for their maintenance. And the work has to be done. So if there's an urgent service bulletin, airworthiness directive, whatever it is, and I've seen them before, then, so for example, V2500, there's a flange on the outside of the inner core of the engine, the outside of the case, where somebody recently discovered a crack. And therefore, it's actually one of the easiest inspections to do, because you're looking at the outside of the engine. But you've got to boroscope it because you want a very close image. But that simply has to be factored in. The airlines get advance notice. They're obviously subscribers to all of the necessary maintenance manuals and manufacturers' information. And then they've just got to work it in. They've got a time frame, and it's basically, it's tough. They've got to work it in, and they've got to get those aircraft, or the engines taken off at least and swapped round, and get that work done. So it's a non-negotiable, really. So yeah, it's a good question, that one.
Thanks.
Yeah.
What the training involved, Peter, to get to where you are now? Is it quite intense, actually? Is there like a training course?
Yeah, well, you basically, obviously, people come from different backgrounds. Engineers tend to do a lot of different things, and it's a competency. A lot of people in engineering pick up specific competencies, things that they do. There's also type ratings, the same as with the pilots, type ratings on the aircraft. And it takes quite a long time. The key thing really is there are various courses that are run by various organisations, Part 145, Part 147, One of them comes under maintenance, one under training. But in essence, what you do for every single engine that you look at, you have to do competency training on that engine, how to boroscope that engine specifically. You have the fundamentals of how to do it, but you don't just go to courses. You actually have to then be under an organization where people more experienced than yourself are showing you how to boroscope and going through the technique. And you're obviously monitored like any other profession. You're monitored until you get to a stage where you can be allowed to do tasks yourself, and then eventually you are given an approval and you go out and you inspect yourself. Anybody can do it with a determination. It's planes are going to keep flying, and we need people out there engineering and doing all sorts of things really to do with the aircraft, but boroscoping particularly. Great job because you get to travel around a lot and see a lot of different aircraft up close, and it's good fun.
To brief or wrap, or to sort of wrap the whole thing up, Peter, anyone who wants to get into your area of work, what's the best sort of way to get into it as such?
I think go to the aviation events and get talking to the companies that are doing scholarships, apprenticeships and so on. Get talking to people, get connecting with people. Obviously, for people who are, for example, in school or college, just getting a good set of qualifications, look at getting work experience if possible, wherever is your local airport. Get it done as early as you can, because security obviously is an issue, getting clearances. But most places are very eager to take on apprentices. I did an apprenticeship at Rolls-Royce Aerospace back in the 1990s. And that's the way to go, certainly for the younger individuals, because it's suited to school stage people. But, people changing careers is a similar thing. Looking at training options, but go to the aviation events and start talking to the airlines and the maintenance organisations.
So what's the future, sort of last up then, Peter, what's kind of the future plans for you? You're going to stick within the industry?
Obviously, I'm remaining hopeful, remaining positive. We're still going to need aircraft flying, and my suspicion is that as well as the simulators for the engine groundlings and, of course, UTAPs flying the aircraft, going to be absolutely chock-a-blocker when we finally get released. But there's also going to be a lot of boroscope inspections coming up, a lot of work. Just remaining positive, remaining hopeful, obviously looking forward to the future, and so on, and blue skies, I suppose.
That's true. That's a very good line. Just one final question, Tony. I managed to find the one that I was looking for. Tony was asking, can the used fan blades be swapped individually between engines, or do they need to be new ones?
I don't actually know the answer to that. Basically, all of these, particularly the fan blades, very critical in terms. The thing is, with the boroscoping, we don't tend to. Actually, that's the one part that we don't really look at that often. That's dealt with by the maintenance organisation. We tend to look at the rest of the engine. Fan blade, but certainly other blades. You do see people. Engines are broken down and sold on second hand and then have work done to them, but generally speaking, people fit new blades to things. Or there's only so far you can go on a blade. It's had a blend repair, it's had this, that, the other, and you want to be replacing with new parts. But I don't think there's much of a. I think they tend to end up on people's key rings most of the time. Obviously, not a big fan blade, it'd be quite heavy, is it?
Sections thereof, yeah, absolutely. Well, Peter, thank you very much for your time. Andy, thank you very much for your help as well, and some great questions there between you guys. So thank you very much for that.
So, as you can see behind me, I have an excellent view from the control tower at the Dubai Airshow, which I know I'm going a bit against here because it was actually November 2019. But I have to say, one of the highlights, apart from having Neville Bounds with me for the duration of our time there in Dubai, which I have to say, honestly, Nev, it was so good to have you there with me. Honestly, it really was an absolute treat. And hopefully we'll do it again.
Did he snore, Nev?
Well, no, do you know what? He doesn't snore.
No, not you.
Strange because I accused Carlos of snoring at one point, and he said, "By the way, you were snoring." I was so tired at the end of the day because we'd had a couple of great days of filming, so many interviews, wasn't it? Really superb.
Yeah, but it was a great time. We had an absolutely fantastic time, and hopefully we'll be back again this year, 2021, for another instalment at the air show. But the highlight for me, I think, because I couldn't manage to get to the Boeing tent the first time that I went to the air show a few years before, was when me and Nev managed to kind of stampede into the Boeing chalet outside, and which was lovely and air conditioned, I will say. And we managed to grab an interview with Randy Tinseth, who was the former, or he was the VP of commercial marketing at Boeing. And we sat down outside. We got had some lovely furniture, had a lovely cool bottle of water, didn't we, Nev? And sat down, and I had a really interesting chat with Randy, and here it is. So we've been lucky indeed to be invited onto the Boeing terrace here at the Dubai Airshow 2019. I'm here with Randy. Randy, welcome onto the show.
It's my pleasure to be here.
So Randy, Boeing, obviously you've got your name on the back of our IDs, so you're obviously a big player here at the Dubai Airshow.
Oh, it's a very important show for us. It gives us an opportunity to talk with our customers, gives us an opportunity to connect with our suppliers, and probably most important, since it's a show, it gives us an opportunity to fly beautiful airplanes like the 787 Dreamliner and really highlight their features and capabilities.
So Randy, what's one of the biggest things you've brought to the show this year for aircraft? Obviously you've got the Dreamliner over there.
Well, we have the Dreamliner over there. We have other customers like Emirates that have brought 777-300ER over there. We have another 787 by Etihad with that Man-U paint job, which is absolutely spectacular. And then from a military side, which I don't work on, but we do have the U.S. tanker that's over in the DoD corral. So we brought a number of airplanes here to really, like I said, to have a show, to have some fun, and to really illustrate how great those products are.
So Randy, the 777 is obviously one of the most popular aircraft, I think, for the long-haul wide-bodied fleet of airlines that they use. Obviously, we've got the 777X now starting to come online. What was the whole idea on bringing the 777X out with Boeing?
Well, I'll tell you, the 777 has been the most successful wide-body program in aviation history. But we got to the place with the program. We had been producing the 777-300ER for a number of years, and it was time, with the new competition, both from Airbus and from our 787, to make a leap forward on that aircraft. So we worked with GE to develop a new engine. We developed this amazing large composite wing, as we talked about, that has the folding tips. And then we brought a new passenger experience to our customers. So this is just the next step in the evolution of that airplane. It's going to be 10% better than our competitor's new product. You know, it's going to be 30-40% more fuel efficient than airplanes like the A380 or the 747-400. So we're doing the right thing for our customers. I think we're doing the right thing for the environment. And ultimately, I think we're breathing life into an airplane that's now 25 years old and bringing that next generation of aircraft to the market.
So avionics-wise, on the flight deck, is the original 777, say the 300ER that's over there, is the commonality very similar to the latest 777X that's coming online?
Well, the 777X actually looks a whole lot more like an 87 on the flight deck than the 777 today. Clearly, it will have the same type rating, or that's our objective, to have the same type rating as the 777 today, and a common type rating with the 787. The one thing that's new in terms of technology, this will be the first airplane that we build that has a flight deck that actually has screen touch technology. So we're bringing the iPad of today into the flight deck and making it part of that display system.
How important do you think, with that aircraft, the whole passenger experience is? Obviously the airlines can have a choice of interiors and seating, but obviously you've built the aircraft to adapt to whatever the airline wants.
You know, I like to think about it that we give our customers a canvas with the airplane and give them the flexibility to configure that airplane so they can bring their brand in. They can create an environment that is unique to their brand, unique for their customers. I think with the 777X, you know, we recognize every centimeter counts. So actually compared, even though the fuselage of the 777X, outside fuselage, is the same as today's 777, we've actually sculpted the interior a little bit, so we give 10 extra centimeters of space inside the airplane. It doesn't sound like a lot, but what it does is it allows us, at least for the economy class passengers, to configure the airplane in a 10 abreast configuration and still leave 18-inch wide seats. So we're giving them more comfort. We're able to do things with new windows in the airplane, with new architectures, with lower cabin altitude to really help provide a better experience for passengers. And again, our job is to make sure that we give them an architecture, we give them the capabilities, we give them, our customers, the palette to work with, and I think we've done absolutely the right thing with 777X interior.
One of the things we have on this show, we have various crew from airlines come on as guests, and a lot of the crew that we've spoken to who fly on the 777 300ER have said that it's one of the preferred aircraft for the crew rest area especially. Yeah. They find it a lot more accommodating than some other aircraft that are in their fleet.
Well, I had a chance a few years ago to fly on the 777-200LR in the world's longest flight, so I got a chance to use one of those crew rest areas for myself. They are pretty nice. It's a good night's sleep. You know, it's one of those things, the airplane's quiet, you have that sound of the wind and the motion of the aircraft. It just rocks you to sleep. I think one of the things that makes airplanes so successful is it's just rock solid when it flies. And I can tell you with this new big composite wing, we're going to continue to keep that tradition of providing that rock solid performance and cruise capability for our customers.
Now, a few years ago, I was lucky enough to travel out to Muscat in Oman on BA's Dash 9, the Dreamliner. And before I flew on the aircraft, obviously I'd heard all the news reports about how it was, you'd feel fresh, you'd feel more, alive when you got to your destination. I have to say, touch wood, I felt really good when I got there after that flight.
Did you think it was real or was it good marketing for my team?
It's true. It does. You do feel a lot better than you would do on as you say, a standard kind of pressure.
You know, just to tell a little story, a few years ago I flew on my first commercial 787 flight, like so many others, and I held back to talk to one of the flight attendants just a little bit, so I could get her idea of what she thought about the airplane. And so I started the conversation. I said, I work at Boeing. I know a little bit about the Dreamliner. I said, what do you not like about the Dreamliner? And she gave a legitimate complaint that the doors on the lavatories were a little bit flimsy, which we fixed. She said, well, she had a customer that it actually popped off, and you have a customer walking down the aisle with the lavatory door. So we fixed that problem. I said, what do you like? Once I kind of got this conversation going, she said, the air. She said, without question, the air. She said, I feel different, and this is my workplace, and thank you for what you've done to the air. So maybe it's good marketing, but I think we did make a difference.
So going on to some of the older aircraft, the 76 is still obviously being utilised quite a lot across the globe, and the 74 obviously we're still with BA. We're flying back on a 747-400 tomorrow with BA back to the UK. Still a very popular aircraft. Obviously, a lot of the airlines are starting to phase out the 74 now. But do you think the Dash 8 will kind of progress?
As a passenger airplane, probably not. I think that we see the future of the 747-8 as a freighter configuration. It has that unique capability to carry almost 140 tons of cargo. It has the unique nose loading door. So I think that it's going to have a special place there. But I think the future of passenger service for big airplanes is going to be the 777-9. It's going to be the biggest airplane out there. It is significantly more efficient than any four-engine airplane that's flying today or potentially in the future. So I think that's where the future is.
Yeah, it's for me. I've only ever had the experience to travel on the 74 once with Virgin, and it's that iconic experience to be able to travel on the 747. That's a whole.
If you can get in the front of the airplane in the nose section, you can get in the upper deck. It's pretty special. It's the only airplane when you get in that the section forward of door 1 that you're actually landing before the pilot does. So it's kind of fun.
So a couple of things before we wrap up then, Randy. It's obviously we're here on the Boeing stand with you. All the Boeing products going right from the 72 or 717, 72, 73, 74, right through the range. Is there a favourite you have, kind of one that you love to see either in flight or standing?
It's not flying anymore, but I started my career at Boeing as a flight test engineer on the 757 program and the 767 program. Now the good news is, my guess is, between the delivery of our first 767 to the very last one, or last one goes out of service, we're looking at a program that might last 100 years. Pretty amazing when you think about it. It's already been in production 40. We're going to produce it for a number of years, and that last airplane rolls off the line, who knows how long. Could be 100 years beginning to end. But my favorite airplane still is 757. There's no airplane that has that same feel. When you take off, you can feel it in the back of your neck.
Yeah.
So the performance is unmatched. So it's still my favorite ride.
And it is very in my top 2, at least, of favorite aircraft.
But I think
very
it's
good.
because that's where I started.
Yeah.
And it has a special place.
It's a very popular aircraft, I will say,
well,
especially with our
popular.
listeners. So last off then, what's the future hold for Boeing? Where do we go on from, say, the 777X? What do you think is in the future for Boeing?
Well, first of all, I guess I'm a little bit near-term focused. Our first priority has to be to get the 737 MAX back to safe service. We're working hard with the oversight of the regulators to get that done. I think when it comes to the wide-body aircraft, we're in a very good market position there. It's going to continue to be about bringing the 777X to the marketplace. At some point, creating a 777X freighter, because the freighter product line is so important to us, and continue to involve and improve the 787. We launched the 787 now in 2004, so we're 15 years since launch. So, at some point, we just brought the newest member of the 787-10, but at some other point in the future, we have to look at how we improve that airplane as well. So we're always trying to focus on how we can improve and bring more value to our customers. That's what drives us.
Well, I'm pleased to say in a few weeks' time I should be flying out to Oman on a Dash 8 with BA. So
okay, I think you'll
forward to
enjoy that very much.
Yeah. Well, on behalf of us at the Plane Talking UK podcast, it's been an absolute pleasure to talk to you today.
Thank you.
And appreciate your time today, and enjoy the rest of the air show.
I will. Thank you.
Thank you. So, Nev, if people don't already know, where can they search for us on the social medias?
Yes, well, the website, of course, is www.planetalkinguk.com. You can WhatsApp us on +44 757 2249 Twitter is @PlaneTalkingUK, or you can email the show at podcast@planetalkinguk.com.
So we're going to hand things over to Armando then to sign off for this first show of 2021. So, Armando, over to you.
Guys, I'm very much looking forward to 2021. It's going to be a great year. I can already feel it because we're one day into it and everything has gone great. But hey, for all you guys over there in the UK, all our listeners all over the world, and all of us here in America, we're really looking forward to seeing you on the next live show next week on January 8th. Same bat place, same bat channel. See you later.